the House of Representatives has passed the Violent Radicalization and Homegrown Terrorism Prevention Act by a 404-6 vote.
Americanism is under attack by communism, at home and abroad. We're defending it against that attack, but Americanism is also under another kind of an attack. The growing practice of character assassination is already curbing free speech, and it is threatening all our other freedoms. For I know you have no way of telling when some unfounded accusation may be hurled at you, perhaps straight from the halls of Congress.
On November 7, 2007, Mark Weitzman, representing the Simon Wiesenthal Center, spoke before the Homeland Security Subcommittee, and Jane Harman, author of the bill H.R. 1955. The meeting was titled Using the Web as a Weapon, the Internet as a Tool for Violent Radicalization and Homegrown Terrorism. Mr. Weitzman very directly labeled the peaceful 9/11 Truth movement as extremist and associated it with violent criminals like terrorists.
One of the things that we have discovered is that some of the methods used by both our homegrown extremists as well as international extremists are the same. By trying to appeal to a closed group that is, create a closed environment, they help influence the process of radicalization, as has been described earlier. Some of these are conspiracy theories that present a closed view of the world, such as blaming 9/11 as in part of an outside job or a job by outside groups such as the U.S. government. We must have increased cooperation internationally among the political, law enforcement, NGO, academic, and all other interested sectors. There must be the political will to legally act when necessary.
He then went on to display in a PowerPoint presentation web pages from the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth website. He gave them a rather prominent place among some truly nasty, radical jihadist websites and other websites advocating violence. The implication being that peacefully asking questions and demanding answers is terrorism. This is not a hateful website. This is a group of 241 architects and engineers that have serious and educated questions that were not answered by the FEMA or NIST reports, and in the case of Building 7, weren't even asked. Why would Mr. Weitzman accuse these architectural and engineering professionals of spreading disinformation and label them terrorists? They are American citizens. They are educated professionals within their respective fields, and they are activists petitioning Congress for an investigation of the questions raised by their findings. There are no threats posted here, no joy expressed at horrible losses, only genuine concern that truly valuable evidence was overlooked in existing reports. You can see for yourself at ae911truth.org that there is no violent radicalization going on here. Terrorists don't ask Congress to investigate things, and they certainly don't have web pages listing their names and upcoming speaking engagements. Terrorists mask their identities, hide in shadows, and do bad things. Whether you support the truth movement or not, whether you like the questions they are asking or not, I am sure that you understand asking questions and raising awareness of these questions is not terrorism.
Is it constitutional? Is it American to shut down those who ask questions and demand answers and demand justice, which is all the 9/11 Truth movement is seeking to do, and all architects and engineers are seeking to do? What is being attempted here is to tie science-based organizations such as ae911truth.org to terror sites and 9/11 conspiracies and disinformation. Now, all we're showing is the science. There's no doctored videos here. There's no disinformation. Everything we show is backed up and referenced. And had Mark Weitzman looked at our site before he put it up there, he certainly would have seen that that is the case.
Critics of H.R. 1955 had pointed out that the very loose language of the bill could label freedom of speech and other nonviolent forms of political opposition as homegrown terrorism. An interesting point, considering that Mr. Weitzman slandered the 9/11 Truth movement before the Homeland Security Subcommittee. Proponents of the bill, and those that simply doubt the danger of legally defining homegrown terrorism so loosely, argue that the bill would merely establish a harmless commission to investigate ways to prevent violent radicalization and homegrown terrorism. I'm afraid my concerns aren't dismissed as easily. With talking heads calling for the criminalization of free speech and labeling political campaigns domestic threats, with Mark Weitzman implying to the Homeland Security Subcommittee that 9/11 Truth is terrorism, and with the term homegrown terrorism being so loosely defined as to potentially include free speech, I still have some concerns. Calling it a commission does not make it harmless. Google the Macaran Internal Security Act of 1950 sometime and read up on it. It established a Subversive Activities Control Board and authorized concentration camps for emergency situations. President Truman vetoed it, calling it the greatest danger to freedom of speech, press, and assembly since the Alien and Sedition Laws of 1798. But his veto was overridden by an overwhelming majority in the Congress. It became a law, many sections of which were only years later found to be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court and repealed.
There never has been a more futile political movement in the United States than that of communism. After 25 years, they can't get enough votes to keep the name of them about. This idea of finding a communist stone under the bed seems to me all nonsense. And the result of the whole thing is that Americans now are so timid about expressing themselves that we've practically given up democratic methods and free speech.
Another one to look into is the House Un-American Activities Committee, which was responsible for the famous Hollywood blacklist. According to the Teaching Eleanor Roosevelt Glossary, the House Un-American Activities Committee was created in 1938 to investigate alleged disloyalty and subversive activities on the part of private citizens, public employees, and those organizations suspected of having communist ties. Through its power to subpoena witnesses and hold people in contempt of Congress, the committee often pressured witnesses to surrender names and other information. Committee members often branded witnesses as communists if they refused to comply, and sometimes charged them with contempt, denying them their Fifth Amendment right not to testify against themselves. And the blacklists were lists of professionals who were denied employment in their field because of their political beliefs or associations, real or suspected. It caused direct damage to the careers of many Americans, often made betrayal of friendship the price of livelihood, and promoted ideological censorship across the entire country. The questioning style and examination techniques employed by the committee served as the model upon which Senator Joseph McCarthy would conduct his communist witch hunts in the early 1950s. McCarthy learned from the House Un-American Activities Committee that baseless accusations, defamation, and guilt by association could ruin lives and make anyone suspect. McCarthy's tactics and his inability to substantiate his claims led to his being discredited and censured by the United States Senate. Having passed the House of Representatives, H.R. 1955 now sits in the Senate in the form of S. 1959. Establishing a commission is not harmless, not new, and little has changed. The Red Scare is now the terror warning. Communism is now terrorism. And asking questions is now violent radicalization. Please look into these and other similarities on your own, and recognize the threat to freedom of speech that S. 1959 poses. If you recognize the similarities as I do, then write, call, and email your senators right away. It's not that hard to do, and it only takes a few minutes. Tell them that they must find another way to combat real threats that do not undermine the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and that asking questions and seeking answers is not terrorism. And tell them now, while it's still safe to speak out.